In the top stories, budget debate continues with presentation from leader of the opposition. Cuba celebrates its 18th anniversary of the ALBA summit, and at least 4 people dead after boat capsizes in English Channel. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Today's Thursday, the 15th of December 2022. I'm Jason Davis. Nationally, the debate of the 2023 national budget continued on Thursday morning with a presentation by Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Mark Brantley. In his critique, Mr. Brantley described the proposed estimates as a quote-unquote reasonable budget. However, he said it was lacking in specific measures to respond to what the Prime Minister described as a looming threat of global recession and other factors such as supply chain disruptions and the impacts of climate change.
If we accept that there is, to use his words, a looming threat of a global recession, then it means therefore that this budget ought to respond to that and to say to the people of the nation, in light of this looming threat, this is what we propose to do. And I regret that looking through the budget document, I see that statement almost as if it's a statement standing on its own. Because I saw thereafter no prescription to say how will we deal with that eventuality if it were to emerge.
Mr. Brantley suggested that in order to combat these external factors, the habits of the people need to change. This would include becoming less dependent on imported products and buying and eating more locally produced foods.
St. Kitts and Nevis.
Honorable Dr. Terence Drew presented a $1.02 billion budget under the theme Towards Our Transformation as a Sustainable Small Island State. The federal cabinet has agreed to make a number of upgrades to the country's passport. This was revealed by Cabinet Secretary Dr. Marcus Natta during Monday's cabinet briefing.
The cabinet has approved a much-needed enhancement of our St. Kitts and Nevis passport. The upgrades include increasing the number of pages from 32 to 48, adding enhanced security features to all pages, including the data page laminate and laser-engraved polycarbonate data page.
He noted that the Federation would be the second country in the OECS to launch the most secure and durable passport.
St. Kitts and Nevis will be the second country in the OECS to launch the most secure and modern passport solution, providing superior durability and security and making it tear, water, and tamper.
Other matters discussed during the cabinet briefing included Cabinet's approval of the accession of the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Dr. Natta explained that the covenant affords the rights of individuals to enjoy civil and political freedom as well as freedom from fear and want, granting economic, social, and cultural rights, including labor rights and the right to health, education, and an adequate standard of living. In other news, Stone Barn at Park Hyatt St. Kitts Christophe Harbor has been named the Caribbean's best fine dining hotel restaurant 2022. The accolade was officially announced on Wednesday at the 3rd Annual World Culinary Awards. The World Culinary's Best Fine Dining Award is given to a restaurant operating within the premises of a hotel where food is served in a formal manner and at a high standard. The Stone Barn restaurant is nestled within the Park Hyatt property and is named after the stone barn structures once used to protect crops during the wet season on St. Kitts. According to a press statement, Park Hyatt St. Kitts' dedication to exceptional culinary and dining experiences for guests is largely credited to the resort's executive chef, Lucas Curcio. Stone Barn's cuisine is designed to fuse international cuisine with the traditions of a Kittitian cuisine, making Stone Barn an, quote, exceptional choice for this year's World Culinary Awards, end quote. World Culinary Awards serves to celebrate and reward excellence in the culinary industry through an annual awards program. Moving now to news on the regional scene. Cuba is currently hosting the 22nd ALBA TCP Summit to commemorate the 18th anniversary of its creation and to reiterate its solidarity and regional collaboration. More in this Telesur report.
The meeting aimed to commemorate the 18th anniversary of the creation of ALBA TCP as a platform dedicated to the integration of Latin American and Caribbean countries, focusing on solidarity, complementarity, justice, and cooperation. Over the years, ALBA TCP has had the fundamental historical purpose of uniting the capabilities and strengths of its member countries to achieve structural transformations and relations necessary to accomplish an integral development. The alliances is made up of 10 member countries: Venezuela, Bolivia, Nicaragua, Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, St. Kitts and Nevis, Grenada and Cuba.
Cruise ships in Grenada were turned back due to the effects of adverse weather conditions on the island. More in this GBN News report.
2 cruise ships were unable to dock at the St. George's Cruise Ship Terminal on Wednesday morning. That as a result of adverse weather conditions, high swells and broken lines, according to the Grenada Tourism Authority. The cruise ships had to turn back in less than an hour after arriving in Grenada. The first expected ship was Ventura, which arrived at 7 a.m., and Ada Perla at 8 a.m. Both ships were expected to depart Grenada at 6 p.m. On Tuesday, the Meteorological Office at the Maurice Bishop International Airport and the National Disaster Management Agency issued a release informing that Grenada and neighboring islands were experiencing a trough with accompanying conditions, which were expected to continue today. Some of the potential weather impacts include territorial coastal waters are projected to be agitated with waves extending to 8 feet above normal northeasterly swells. High surfs and marine advisories are in effect. According to the GTA, for the 2022-2023 season, over 200 cruise calls are scheduled. This represents an 11% increase in the amount of calls last season. Christina John, GBN News.
Internationally, at least 4 people are dead after an incident involving a small boat in the English Channel between Britain and France, the British government has said. According to British media reports, dozens of people were rescued after a small boat capsized in the icy water off the British coast on Wednesday. British radio station LBC reported that 43 people had been rescued. Al Jazeera's Andrew Simmons reports.
Not for the first time, refugees and migrants dying at sea, but more lives were saved than lost as fishermen pulled people to safety from the icy waters of the English Channel.
A rigid inflatable boat with people on board, migrants, was crossing and was sinking very, very near to where he was fishing. So amazingly, he got right in next to the sinking boat and managed to come alongside and safely get 31 people on board.
This latest tragedy is once again down to people traffickers. They're not deterred by freezing weather, neither, it seems, are the migrants. Channel crossings is an ongoing humanitarian crisis, and people traffickers have never been busier. At the same time, politicians are running short of ideas on how to stop them.
It is not cruel or unkind to want to break the stranglehold of the criminal gangs who trade in human misery and who exploit our system and our laws.
I'm sure the whole House will share my sorrow at the capsizing of a small boat in the Channel in the early hours of this morning and the tragic loss of human life. Our hearts go out to all those affected.
Less than 24 hours before these deaths, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak had been talking about new measures to curb the Channel crossings. But so far, every measure the UK government introduces has failed.
There needs to be safe and legal routes. That's the biggest issue that we've got at the moment, is that people are making the journey from Calais because there is no other way of doing it. You have to be on British soil, on the island, in order to seek asylum. There's no centre in Calais where you can claim asylum, so people have no choice but to make this journey. And that is the single biggest thing that the government could do in order to prevent people having to risk their lives.
Here at Dover Lifeboat Station, they've seen it all before. People trafficking across the Channel is at record levels. 40,000 this year, and at the weekend alone, 500 risked their lives. Tragedies are all too frequent. This time, more lives were saved than lost, but that isn't always the case. Last November, 27 lives were lost in the Channel, the highest number ever recorded. A diplomatic spat followed between France and the UK, with the British saying the French should do more to stop the small boats from leaving their shoreline. As the lifeboat crews will tell you, the crossings are ever more frequent and dangerous. Andrew Simmons, Al Jazeera, Dover.
Still on the international scene, China raced to vaccinate its most vulnerable people in anticipation of waves of COVID infections, with some analysts expecting the death toll to soar after a loosening of strict protocols. More in this Reuters report.
Video obtained by Reuters showed people receiving IV drips on the street in central China. It's a worrying sign that a wave of COVID infections is building after the country last week began dismantling its tough zero COVID controls. In another video released on Monday, patients are seen receiving IV drips in their cars in the same province of Hubei. These are just some of the increasing signs of chaos in China as it battles a COVID surge while racing to vaccinate its most vulnerable people. The World Health Organization said on Wednesday the virus was out of control in China well before the easing of restrictions following widespread protests. WHO Emergencies Director Mike Ryan said it was a strategic decision to pivot away from President Xi's flagship policy.
There's a little narrative at the moment that in some way China lifted the restrictions and all of a sudden the disease is out of control. The disease was spreading intensively because I believe the control measures in themselves were not stopping the disease. And I believe that the Chinese authorities have decided strategically that that for them is not the best option anymore.
In Beijing on Thursday, long queues were forming outside pharmacy stores as residents rushed to pick up extra medicines. There were similar scenes outside fever clinics in the capital. One local resident Reuters spoke to said he was worried about how fast the virus was spreading. China reported 2,000 new symptomatic COVID-19 infections for Wednesday, compared with 2,291 a day earlier. But the official figures have become an unreliable guide as less testing is being done in the country. On Wednesday, China's National Health Commission announced it would roll out a second COVID-19 vaccine booster shot for high-risk groups and people over 60 years old.
And now for the weather. Present weather is fair skies with slight dust haze. The temperature for today is 29 degrees Celsius or 84 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds are a gentle breeze of 10 miles per hour from a northeasterly direction. Seas are moderate with waves of 5 to 7 feet in northerly swells, and a high surf advisory remains in effect. The weather forecast for St. Kitts and Nevis for today and tonight will be partly cloudy with a 20% or slight chance of showers. Sunset today will be at 5:39 p.m., sunrise tomorrow at 6:32 a.m. And that brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Join us this evening for these stories and more in detail. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Jason Davis.